today I have Jack Hues with me. Jack was the singer for Wang Chung from the band's beginning in '77. Over the years, Jack has been a part of many different projects with great musicians like Tony Banks of Genesis, and has also taught songwriting at Christ Church University in Canterbury. Jack released his first solo album entitled Primitive in March 2020, and tomorrow he will release his second solo effort called Electro-Acoustic Works 2020. And it is exciting, Jack. Tomorrow is the big day.
Yeah, sadly, it's not going to come out tomorrow.
Oh, it isn't?
Just because, yeah, basically the vinyl manufacturing process has taken a lot longer than we imagined, and I think everybody is experiencing these similar delays. So we've pushed it back to, I think, the 25th of September for the release date. So they're actually pressing up the vinyl next week, and so we should have it by the 25th, you know.
All right.
So everything's set to go then. So sorry, I should have let you know that a little earlier, maybe before the big announcement.
No, that's okay. The 25th, that's not too long. No.
That's not too long, is it?
Yeah, it's not too long. And we're going to get vinyl. That's just good news.
Vinyl, yeah. Yeah, with both Primitive and this album, I conceive them as vinyl artifacts, if you like.
Yeah.
There's definitely a sense of side one and side two. Well, in the case of Primitive, it was a double album, you know. And that was very much inspired by the impact of the great double albums that came out when I was a kid, you know. So I'm thinking of the White Album and Electric Ladyland, Wheels of Fire, Blonde and Blonde, you know. And each of those albums had a big sort of presence in my record collection, you know, and not just the quantity, but just the quality of that sort of gatefold sleeve. And also I think artists, when they're making a double album, show more of themselves. It's less filtered, if you know what I mean. And, I like that very much, you know.
And I felt that way with this record.
Okay.
I really did. It feels very unfiltered. That's a great way to put it. I feel like I'm getting all of you. It is a journey. It is a journey through your musical mind. It's really, really beautiful work of art.
Thank you, Scott.
Yeah. These two solo albums are very different for what you're used to doing. Are they not? I mean, was it difficult for you to write?
Oh no. This was stuff that just came out, you know, needed to come out in a sense, you know. So there certainly was no difficulty, I don't think. And yeah, I've been thinking about this a little, you know, like I think when I was in the late 70s, when I started my career with Nick Feldman, you know, and we formed various bands and eventually distilled it into Wang Chung, you know. Obviously at that time, you're under a certain amount of pressure to conform to the flavors of the day, if you like, you know. And although we had a lot of independence, really. I think in those days artists could do their thing, you know, and record companies were looking for that individuality, you know. I think and dancehall days, in a sense, made that, created a sort of sense of Wang Chung, as it were, you know. But there was pressure to sort of conform to your own stereotype, if you like, you know, and also pressure to conform to the bigger market, you know, sort of like, so what kind of band are you? You know, you're a rock band or this band or that band, you know. Right. And I think at that time, in the history of the music that we've sort of all grown up with and loved, you know, progressive rock, was at an all-time low, in a sense, you know, especially in England, you know. The punk revolution had kicked that all into the trash, basically, you know. And so we were sort of, you couldn't look in that direction even, you know. And I think my two solo albums, in a sense, show a sort of reconnection with that sort of, the music from 68 to 75 kind of thing, you know, that I really sort of grew up with and loved, you know.
Yeah. You know, I listened to the midsection, especially of this record, Inyanga. Part one, it's moving and changing and very atmospheric.
Yeah.
And in Yanga Part 2, it's a avant-garde jazz thing almost.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very, very progressive, like you say.
Yeah.
It's, you know, a Pink Floyd meets Miles Davis, if you will.
Well, great.
Which
Yeah. It's
really,
kind of what I was not. I mean, I think when you set out and do an album, first of all, you don't set out to do an album. I was started recording stuff, and it was during lockdown, and off the back of Primitive, that was quite an outpouring of songs and so on from me. And in normal times, I would have been that year touring probably in the States with Wang Chung and pushing Primitive as well. I would love to do some live shows in the States with the solo stuff as well, so maybe hoping towards the end of the year to have something happening on that front,
great.
So with the lockdown, it meant I was thrown, well, back here. I live on my own in my house these days, and I kind of thought, well, let's just do another record. Let's start recording, and in the first instance, I was more interested in the acoustic bit of the electro-acoustic, if you like,
Right.
And I made a few songs, just using acoustic guitar and voice. One of those survives on the new album, But after a while, I started getting bigger ideas and more ideas, And that sense of bringing in my sort of jazz influences that come from really the last 20 years or so, which is really getting into Miles, especially, and the electric Miles of In a Silent Way and Witch's Brew,
Yeah.
And sort of hearing that as like very important music to me, and the sense of, I guess, if I have a problem with the way music's regarded these days, it's this obsession with genres, do you know what I mean? And this sort of thing, and how young bands really have to sort of stick to their little corner, And I was thinking, I want to do it all, and so it was deliberate in a sense to bring in the Miles influence, And fortunately, I found a really amazing trumpet player who lives very close to me in Canterbury,
Fantastic.
And, so he came, and when the lockdown was a little less stringent and we could, go to each other's houses, he came over here and just played on those 2 tracks that he features on.
Man, it's gorgeous. Yeah, it is just beautiful. I love the progression of this music. I'm a big fan of progressive music.
Yeah.
But you also it's the whole thing isn't progressive. You have what we're expecting, maybe a lot of people are expecting. So it's a full record, and it's a full journey, and that was really special from beginning to end. Definitely. You have some really deep lyrical passages as well. Very insightful, socially conscious. I think Don't Waste Words. Really quite heavy. Friend in a hospital bed. Growing up in a time where you didn't have to bow down or believe in God and the Pope, Queen and Country. These are deep thoughts. What did your time in lockdown really have a deep effect on this music?
Kind of did, actually.
Feels like
I sort of I had to do a lot of reading and stuff, but I was in lockdown. I sort of thought, the one thing I don't do is listen to audio books so much, and I thought, I'm going to start each day with some breakfast and just sit in my kitchen, which is a nice sort of comfortable room, and listen to some audio books, and just use this time really constructively. And the first book I listened to was a new biography of William Wordsworth, the poet, who was a very socially conscious poet. And the guy who wrote that was a guy called Jonathan Bate, and he also wrote a book on Ted Hues, who's a more contemporary English poet. And I listened to that, and I'd never got into Ted Hues. I knew the name, but I didn't know his work. And that biography of him had a huge impact on me, actually. And Ted Hues as a poet and an artist, he was married to Sylvia Plath. And Sylvia Plath, of course, committed suicide. Those are the sort of big headlines. But the biography of him also, goes into a lot more detail about the dynamics of their relationship and so on, you know.
Yeah.
But it just turned me on to reading some of his poetry, and his poetry is very much about being in the present moment and writing about what's right in front of you, you know.
Yeah.
And that, just that ethos, in a sense, you know, made me sort of think, you know, get out of your head and sort of ideas, you know. Primitif is a lot about sort of ideas in my head, if you like, do you know what I mean? And this new album, electro-acoustic works, is more about just writing about what's going on around me, you know. So Don't Waste Words, yeah, was this sense of trying to write about well, I guess it was really precipitated by my friend who actually did the album cover for this piece.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you that about
Yeah,
that
yeah,
too. Yeah.
yeah. Well, he did that, you know, and he has been suffering from cancer for the last 4 or 5 years, you know, and very sadly he passed away yesterday, you know.
Oh, I'm so
And
sorry.
so it's a big thing, actually, you know. And so Don't Waste Words is in that sense very special, in that I was trying to write about me and him growing up together. And what I do think is, I mean, I guess every time's a unique time in human history, but the time that we had, you know, and especially a time that was defined by this incredible music that we were growing up with at the time, it really articulated a lot of feelings, you know. And then, of course, we're living in the current world, you know, which is a very different sort of world, I think, you know.
It is.
Yeah, I was trying to sort of capture that in a way, you know.
Oh yeah, I know. I'm very, very sorry to hear that.
Yeah, thank you.
That
Yeah.
that's that song touched me. You know, is
Okay.
why I ask.
Yeah.
So it will touch me even deeper. And
Yeah. No, it certainly means a great deal to me, you know, and the fact that he's, you know, done the cover, and it's a great, I mean, he was a great artist, and he did a lot of great work, you know. But I'm pleased that this record's coming out and it's got his work on it, and we'll celebrate what he was happiest with and best at, you know, which was his art. You know?
It's special. That's very special.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the cover. You know, I saw it, and it's so detailed, and there's so much in it. I was reminded of the Beatles Revolver, the classic cover.
Yeah.
It's a big illustration that keeps you finding things. It's a very interesting cover. Did he come up with that whole concept, or did you give any instruction on that? How much input did you have on that?
Not at all, really. He basically had done that. He did 3 pen and ink drawings, which is what they are, and they're big scale as well, like kind of about 5 foot tall, maybe 4 foot tall by 2 feet wide, something like that. And he did 3 of them, and that one in particular I just thought was amazing, you know. So I said, how about using that for the cover? And he was always very agreeable. He was always so supportive, you know. And so yeah, but it just you know, he was doing the same thing I suppose I was doing. He was trying to document what he was seeing around him, but also bringing to bear all the influences that had fired him when he was younger, especially, you know, the sort of Salvador Dali kind of surrealism. You know, when you look into it, you see all these kind of details. There's even sort of Hieronymus Bosch and that kind of nightmarish thing going on the cover, you know. But it's got all sorts of references to COVID and also to his struggle with cancer as well, you know. So yeah, I mean, it's deep and heavy stuff, but that's kind of what I wanted, you know.
Yeah, I noticed that when you know, when I was looking at it, is like you see so much. It's there's so much information there, and it's so interesting. You know, like I say, it will last for years to pulling things out of that when you look at it. And on vinyl, it's mandatory to get on vinyl to get that bigger piece.
Scale.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because what I'm seeing on my screen is very, very little, and it's interesting. I'm looking forward to the vinyl for sure.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Another song that on the album, Sounds of the Universe, very socially conscious with our COVID situation, and a little more of that type of song that people would expect, you know, the Wang Chung fans might expect from you. But I got to thinking, listening to this, very introspective with COVID. Does this album, because of the progressive part of the middle of the album as well, takes a lot of time, and it's a huge undertaking. So I'm thinking, the lockdown would help with something like that, the silver lining. Would we have this record if it wasn't for COVID? Would you have taken the time to write this beautifully, crafted piece of work, which takes so much time? Would that have happened if we didn't have COVID?
I think probably not. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it does require a lot of time. I mean, it's not like I love doing it. There's nothing better in a sense than working on something like this. And I was fired up with the ideas. I think you need to have good ideas in the first place, and then you can articulate them and develop them and so on.
Yeah.
But as I say, I think I would not have been in the sort of recording, writing mode in normal times. I would be leaving that until this year, really, to sort of when I'd had time to let the well fill up a bit,
Yeah.
But, I'm not sure that metaphor quite applied, really. There still seemed to be a lot to say, and it was, so it's very much a product of the times.
Yeah, that is a silver lining to a very, very bad situation. So
absolutely, it's been great.
Yeah. Before you started writing, did you have an intention with this album? Did you have anything specific that you wanted to achieve? Did you say, I want to write an epic piece of progressive music, or did it just organically happen?
I suppose, I always sort of think if I have intentions in my conscious mind, I almost do the opposite. And so I think that if there were intentions, they were very back in my subconscious in a way. But I think I always did want to make an album where it began with a track and ended with a reprise of that track and took you on a journey through it, and that's what I achieved with this record, which I felt good about. And I think also I've always loved Pink Floyd's album Metal, and I love that sort of structure where it's got 5 or 6 songs on the first side that are quite sort of disjointed seemingly, sort of thing, and then echoes on the second side, and it all kind of, I don't know, there's a sort of balance between those sort of whimsical things and then a very focused bit of structured work, and I love that kind of experience, And with the vinyl version of the album, the way you'll get it is that there's the album, which is exactly that structure, and it ends with the reprise of "We Got to Work Together," and then Fruitbat Reset and Sounds of the Universe are on a separate 7-inch single, which is like inserted into it, And again, I wanted to sort of remind people at that time, like when the Beatles made albums, and their singles were separate entities, so the singles were not on the album, and so and I guess the first song that I really wrote on this album was Fruitbat Reset.
Okay.
And so Fruitbat Reset is a bit of graffiti that started to appear around Canterbury and on sort of freeway bridges and stuff like that. I used to sort of pass it, on the freeway, and Fruitbat Reset just really seemed to sum up where we were with this pandemic. This idea that it comes from fruit bats and stuff.
Yeah.
And this idea, that it's these sort of tiny little animals kind of resetting the whole human thing again.
Right.
And there was just something very powerful about that. So without giving too much away, when you buy the vinyl album, you've got Ron's cover, and then the gatefold is a picture of this motorway bridge with Fruitbat Reset written across it.
Oh, beautiful.
But with that track, I sort of grew a bit not bored with it actually, but I sort of thought, well, it's a bit obvious and a bit commercial and stuff,
Right.
But at the end, I sort of thought, well, I don't want to just jettison it, but I just sort of thought, well, I'm just going to leave it as a demo, which is what it is essentially. It's not got any other players on it, it's got programmed drums, but it sort of works like that, and that was partly because I recorded it in a slightly strange way with all sorts of minute tempo changes, and it was very hard to record. Technically, it was impossible to add to it. So it sort of is what it is, but it occurred to me that, having that as a single, as a sort of an additional thing would be a cool way to present the project.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And and it's also, without those two, it's like you say, it's completing that journey with the reprise,
Exactly.
and it's just, and that's exactly how I felt. Like I say, it was Pink Floyd meets Miles Davis.
Yeah, that's pretty good, I think. Yeah.
And a journey through the whole thing.
Yeah.
It really is, and
Yeah.
that's a vinyl thing for me. Being
Yeah.
an old school guy,
Yeah.
I look forward to dropping that needle and getting lost
Yeah.
for a bit.
Yeah. Well, I think vinyl is a whole. I know people think it's sort of old-fashioned, but in a way, it's a thing in itself, isn't it? It is an artifact. I mean, I'm buying quite a lot of stuff on vinyl again these days, with all the reissues and stuff, But you do listen in a different way with vinyl, I think, because, you have to sort of sit and listen,
It is an event. That's the way it feels to me. It's not just, something you put on in the car for a few minutes. It's, you pull it out, you get it set, you drop it on, you put the needle on. It's an event. It's a beautiful thing. I really miss it with a lot of things. And I think it adds value to the music itself.
I think it does. Yeah.
Really.
And I think the vinyl cut with this, a guy called John Davis, Metropolis, which is a beautiful studio in London, he did the vinyl cut for me, and it sounds great, like really like old school.
Fantastic. Now, you did a couple of soundtracks. You did To Live and Die in LA, which is a record I absolutely love. And it just fit the movie so well. And the William Friedkin film, The Guardian, is a movie soundtrack something that you enjoy doing? I've heard before that it takes the musician out of the craftiness of what they do sometimes, because they have to fit a certain tempo or mood. Did you enjoy doing those, and would you consider doing more of them?
Yeah, I mean, I was very fortunate with To Live and Die in LA, in that I wrote the music without seeing the movie. And so it's an oft-told story, but basically Bill Friedkin, I mean, he edited the movie to a certain extent, but I think certain scenes he cut to the music and so on, and other scenes he just laid a bit of music in there, and
it does fit the music so well. I mean, it really does.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the reasons why the music works so well is that he allowed the visuals to be dictated by the pace of the music, and that so rarely happens, I think, in modern movies. And to that extent, when I did The Guardian for him, that was a sort of strange project, but I was writing music to picture, so I was out in LA with an engineer friend of mine, and day after day, kind of, trying to fit everything together. And I felt that was a much less successful process, even though it came just as Wang Chung broke up, really. So it was a bit of ideal timing for me to work in a different sort of area of music,
Right.
But my experience was that, if I were going to do another soundtrack, I would kind of prefer to do it without seeing the movie.
Right.
And let the movie editors, cut the music, and I think of a lot of my favorite films, like 2001, the Kubrick movies in general, the way that he would use pre-composed, music, found music, if you like, and he would cut the movie to the music. And to me, there's a massive difference between the pace that music runs at and that life runs at as it's depicted in a movie. Music is much slower, and I think it takes more time, for the music to play itself out. You've got to slow the visuals down to cope with it. But I think those contrasts make for great cinema, and when everything is just intent on telling you the story and keeping you entertained and all that stuff, I really get very bored with that kind of same pace,
And so many films do that, where you're living 3 days of life in a matter of a couple minutes. Definitely not a musical thing. And it's great. It's great respect to you and your music for the filmmaker
Mm.
like Friedkin did to cut the film to
Well, amazing, yeah.
fit the music, guys. That's very respectful of what you do,
Well,
and
it's
kudos
amazing
to
that you
him.
had that, and I know, and also working with the guy who's actually making the movie, because what I
Mhm.
found in some other sort of forays that I made into Hollywood and doing some TV stuff, I did some stuff for HBO and bits and pieces,
Mhm.
but you're dealing with this whole kind of food chain of people who have various degrees of power and so on. And I
Yeah.
remember doing one thing where I'd done this quite sort of spacey, ethereal kind of soundtrack, and the director had sort of accepted it. But then I got a call from one of the producers saying, and this is in the sort of mid-90s, do you think you could make it more like the Stone Roses? Who were the kind of
Oh,
band of the year. Did you know what I mean?
right.
I was thinking, yeah, I can do that, but you need to pay me a bit more money because it's basically starting again.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
but I got that, someone had woken up that morning and thought, I like the Stone Roses. Let's do that. Yeah. And so I found that a kind of a bit of a turn off about
Yeah.
the movie business, that there's a lot of people involved in it, and it's music is at the whim of some very unmusical people.
Yeah. A lot more politics than anybody needs, probably.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And so working with Freakin was a dream because Billy is really into music, and
Yeah.
he's once he's made a decision, he's very committed to his decision. So,
Yeah, that's great to hear. That's great
yeah,
to hear.
yeah,
Around that time, I've heard that you did a solo album for Sony
yes,
called The Anatomy Lesson,
yeah.
which nobody has ever heard. Will we ever get to hear that? Are you proud of that, or is that something
Yeah.
that's going to stay in the vault?
It's a difficult one that I should. I will put it out at some point.
I hope so. I hope so.
Yeah,
I'd love
yeah.
to
I mean,
hear it.
it's an album that, again, it's an album I needed to make at the time, I think, with a lot of pent up sort of frustrations, that grew from the restrictions of the Wang Chung situation at the time.
Right.
Um, but I think it was a very painful time, when I think for an artist to make a record and then not have it released,
Yeah.
for it to be blocked, essentially, which it sort of was for political reasons.
Right.
Uh, is crippling. Actually, I think that sort of knocked me off course for maybe 10 years. Really.
I just can't imagine that,
Yeah.
as somebody who creates any kind of
Mm.
art,
Yeah.
you want to bring it forward,
You do. Yeah. Yeah.
especially as a musician.
Yeah.
You make it for people to listen to, usually most musicians.
Yeah.
Uh, for nobody to hear it, it has to be very, very frustrating. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it was, and also you're kept on in record companies. They keep you on this sort of line. Do you know what I mean? Where you're
Right.
thinking, I'll just give it one more week, and then, and it just gets very like a
Yeah.
torture.
We would
Without
love
wanting
to
to
hear
make
it.
any sort of inflated comparisons, it makes me really sympathize with Brian Wilson and
Yeah.
Smile, which I think is a masterpiece.
Yeah.
The fact, I mean, people sort of say, oh, it was the drugs and everything that pushed him over the edge, but I think really the lack of support that he received for what was an incredible bit of work
Yeah.
was enough to drive any artist into a sort of terrible depression, I think.
Yeah. And it's strange, as musicians are artists, and artists are a special type of, there's a heart and soul with an artist that's
Yeah.
not part of that political machine business model.
Right.
And that's the funny thing about the music business, I think, is
Yeah.
you're mixing two totally separate worlds and
Yeah.
trying to get them to work. It doesn't always happen.
Well, it's difficult, very difficult. I mean, I think I'm not down on it at all. I think the period that I lived through, especially in the 80s, when the record companies were very supportive of the artists that they, I mean, there was that incredible filter that you had to get signed in the first place,
Right.
But once again, my experience with Geffen Records was that they really committed. They spent a lot of money on Wang Chung, and they did their best to sort of get us across to as bigger audience as they could,
Yeah.
and that is a service that any artist has got to be grateful for,
Yeah.
whatever the royalty rates are and the rest of it.
Right. But that's great when you have that kind of support. Not,
Yeah.
not every record company did that. And you
No.
were with so many labels over the years,
Yeah.
just about all of them, right?
Yes.
Columbia, you
Yeah.
did Sony,
Yeah.
so many.
Yeah.
So you've experienced all that. So to
Yeah.
hear, be with one that's that supportive is a great thing. How has your approach changed to writing since that time, since those the Wang Chung days in the 80s?
Yeah.
Your music's quite different. A lot of it is anyway. Um, do you write the same way? Do you have the same formula, the way you write and create music?
Uh, I think back in the Wang Chung days, the early days especially, I was just sort of writing the next song I wrote, influenced by whatever I just heard, or, and some deeper in the past things as well, So Dancehall Days was, it wasn't a calculated song, I didn't think, even when I'd written it, I didn't think I'd written a big hit song, but I got that when I played it to people, starting with Nick Feldman, he was like, wow, this is great, this is special, and I got that it had appeal, but I've never had a formula. And rather, like I said at the beginning, if I do have a conscious intention, which is like, okay, Jack, write a hit, I write, some 12-minute froggy thing or something, So no, I kind of I just try and stay true to what's coming out, and I think you need, you get ideas, sticking with them and realizing them is sometimes takes a lot of effort, and sometimes you get to a place where it feels very uphill.
Yeah.
I remember on Primitive there was a track called Winter that I sort of worked on for ages, and then thought, oh, this just isn't working, and left it, and then came back to it and thought, actually there's something in this, and worked on it a bit more, and rejected it again, and I think it was the last track I finished in the end, and I sort of mastered the whole album, and then thought, I'm just going to change this and just so I never quite settled on it, but that's a good bit of work, that some tracks really require your full cold face kind of attention. Other things just pop out, and sort of done before you know it. And Dancehall Days was a bit like that, really. It wasn't an effortful song to write. It was it just sort of came.
Fantastic. Yeah, and that's that's part of being the artist is you're never really done with anything, right?
And with music, you're also on this constant upward rising slope, sometimes very steep. I'm trying to, it's not exactly master it, because you never master it, but you're on this quest really to get better at it, and as a player and as a writer, you're constantly trying to improve.
Yeah, definitely. And I want to be respectful of your time here. I just got a couple more for you.
Sure.
If you could go back to 77, that's the beginning of your musical career, right around that time, and give that Jack Hues a piece of advice, what would that be?
Collaborate.
All right. Find like-minded artists to share your
sort of bring in talented people and let them do their thing, and not try and do it all myself, and try and be, I know that's maybe ironic when I'm making these solo albums now, but I think this Electro-Acoustic Works, benefits from the collaboration of Daniel on trumpet, and also with Baby and Salah. Her vocals were an amazing part of it as well. And at various times, musicians came in, Josh on drums, that they made great contributions, So I think in the early days, I kind of thought, and I think it may be a lot of musicians in the 80s, with the advent of drum machines and all the technology, it was kind of like, you don't need a band anymore, you can kind of do it yourself, but you need a band, you need other people involved, and you need to listen to them, and as you say, choose great people and let them do their thing.
Yeah, excellent, excellent.
Yeah.
Are you going to tour? You mentioned coming to the States, maybe
Yeah.
possibly by the end of the year, or the
Yeah, I mean, it's
beginning
not
of.
going to happen this year. I know that there's plans to do some Wang Chung work in the States next year, but that's mainly in the sort of retro area.
Yeah,
But I would love to do some work with these two albums. I think we could
yeah,
do a really good show. I'm going to be doing some gigs like in 2 weeks' time, literally, with my band. For these two solo albums, to sort of launch electro-acoustic works, and we're playing some little venues with a very big band. I've got two drummers, and Daniel's going to be playing. Baby and Salar's going to be singing. I've got some really great players. But we'll squeeze in somehow, and I think
yeah.
people will have a pretty amazing time because there's some great musicians playing.
Yeah, and great music. There's great
Yeah,
musicians playing amazing songs, and
yeah,
it will be sensational, I'm
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Uh,
If we could get that over to the States, then I would love that, because I think American audiences would really appreciate the musicianship and the scope of what we're trying to do.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. That would be a dream come true. It really would. That'd be
Really, definitely.
fantastic for
Yeah.
sure. Where can we pre-order the record? Get the vinyl? Uh,
Yeah. I guess my website, www.jackhues.com, very simple. Yeah, I think there are links there to being able to buy the album. I think that's the best way to do it. We do have a sort of physical distributor, but I think doing it through the website is certainly, it just comes to my mate who lives
yeah,
down there, just a sort of 30 miles away, sort of thing. He
yeah.
hands all that, and stuff that comes through the website I'll sign, and
That's
all that
great.
good stuff. So yeah,
That is fantastic. Yeah.
yeah,
So yeah, I will put all the links in the piece here. And
great.
Jack, I am so thankful for your time, so thankful for the chat. It's been a dream come true. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and thank you for listening. And great,
Yes.
you've got always good.
Thank you for all the years of music, and it's special in so many lives. And you're doing amazing work. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. I
All
will
right,
talk to you when you get to the States, Jack.
great.
Yeah.
Okay, and thanks for this. It's been really
I,
nice talking with you.
thank you.
Yeah,
Bye bye now.
see you now.